Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. And today I have a special guest with me. If you've seen some of my other videos, then you probably recognize Jacob here. He's from the Couch Gambit podcast, a great podcast that I'll link below that you need to go check out. And Jacob is also a short film movie producer, writer, and director. Do I have that right, Jacob?
Yeah, just keep the comments flowing.
Okay, great. And
He's nice, he's handsome, he's a cool dude.
yeah, he's a good-looking guy. Looks like
Super successful.
Looks like a young J.J. Abrams,
Oh gosh,
with the glasses there. But
I'll take that. Hopefully my hair isn't as crazy. And yeah.
No, it looks better.
Okay, hey, I'll take that.
So
one thing's better.
So there's one thing I've been thinking of lately, because I've been watching some movies lately and stuff that I felt like were pretty good movies, but because of the internet early reactions or people giving their opinion, I kind of shied away from them at first. And then when I went back and watched one in particular, I thought, this is not bad, and I actually was entertained. So I thought to myself, I'm going to call Jacob and ask his opinion, because this is something that I've been wondering is, has the internet and podcasting ruined the movie industry overall? Now, I know there's definitely some positives. Obviously, this is one of them, is that you could actually, I'm not quite there yet, but you can actually quite make a living doing it and work on your own and be your own boss and then also have fun doing something you enjoy. But because we talk about movies whether we get paid or not, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's fun,
It's just nonsense.
It is. So what let me tell you what movie I just saw, and it kind of flopped at the box office, and I felt like it was pretty decent, and that was the Blue Beetle from DC. Did you ever see that?
No, I used to watch the old Batman Brave and the Bold cartoon. Blue Beetle was in it. He was one of my favorite characters. So I knew who it was, but either the marketing wasn't super good. I didn't get barely any trailers for it. I kind of thought it was going to be like a limited release series on Disney Plus, or not Disney Plus, like anything else. And I didn't even realize it came out when it was even out. So I got no marketing. I didn't really care to see it. I knew the actor who was in it. He's okay. I think he's in the Karate Kid show.
The Cobra Kai.
Cobra Kai.
He plays Miguel.
Yeah, he plays Miguel. And I think he's great in that, but he's definitely not a box office draw, nor is really anybody in that movie, so I didn't have a desire to see it. I didn't see it. And it definitely bombed. I mean, so have most of the DC movies recently. They've been stinkers.
Yeah. And some people didn't really give it the greatest reviews. They didn't say it was horrible, but I kind of pushed it aside and didn't decide it. The way that I got to watching it is my wife went to get her car serviced.
Yeah.
I believe it was getting her car serviced. And she had to wait for a few hours at the with the waiting area, and how a lot of them play movies. Mm-hmm. She's like, hey, they were playing the Blue Beetle. She goes, I got all into it. She watched like an hour of it, and she goes, it was actually pretty good. So we sat down and watched it, and I thought, like, this is not bad. I've seen a lot worse.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it was entertaining. I'm sure there's faults of it. I didn't care too much for George Lopez's character and some of his political things that he says, but overall,
did he say Batman was a fascist?
Yes, he did. It's funny. Not to give a review of it, but at first they make him kind of the crazy uncle who's into conspiracies and stuff. And not really, like, to me, like, you take him seriously.
Yeah.
But then as the movie goes on, like, supposedly he's the one that knows really what's going on and the smart one, And
so Blue Beetle just said conspiracy theorist guys are correct.
Yeah, or kind of.
Believe them all.
I like George Lopez, like his show and a few things that he's in, but him as a person, and just saying stupid stuff. But anyway, we've talked about that in my last thing. But so I was thinking that if the internet and podcasts was around back in the 80s, right, would have it changed the whole industry also? Because back then, if we went, now I'm sorry, you weren't around. But
I wasn't even conceived.
No, you weren't. You're
old.
But back then, if we saw a bad movie, it was just like, okay, it was bad, or I didn't care for it, entertain, on to the next one, right?
Yeah.
And stuff. And so I started, like, for instance, I'll give one that I thought was horrible, and it's part of a very huge, iconic 80s trilogy. A movie, actually, I think part one of this trilogy is one of the most iconic 80s movies of all time, and I love it. And I even think part 3 is awesome, but part 2 I feel is just hot garbage. Hot garbage is a very strong word. That's not hot garbage. It just was lazy writing and not good. And I feel that was Back to the Future too. Now, some of you might be like ripping your hair out right now saying, what are you talking about? And I just feel like if the internet was around back then and the leaks came out and all that, then what would come out? That, it's just a reboot of part 1 where goes back to part 1 and watching himself most of the time. And it's just, I just feel it's lazy writing. And then it probably would have made people not really go to the movie theater and watch it. And then it probably would have made people not as interested in part 3 coming out. You know what I mean? Because of all that, of ripping it. But then I feel part 3 came out and killed it, and was just awesome. So thank goodness, people still, just were back then, were like, hey, we're just going to give it another shot. We just didn't like part 2. Or people probably love it. Did you? Just curious. I know you've seen Back to the Futures.
No, I've seen them all. I actually think part 3 has a lot of plot similarities that are a little more similar to the first one than the freaking second one. I think it's going back, it's getting stuck in a time period and fixing the time machine and having some drama due to people back in time. I think there's a lot of similarities. I think there's more similarities to the third one. I don't think anything in the plot has anything to do with or has too many similarities in the second one than it does to the first one. I think number 3 and number 1 have more similarities than number 2 and number 1. But I do believe, if the internet was around back then, it's two things. If the internet was around, Rotten Tomatoes, early reviews, all of that nonsense came out back then, or it was like the way it was today with all the Twitters and all the nonsense and stuff, it would have been different. Podcasting, I think, is slightly different. If I can go on a bit of a side tangent, then I'll get back to the Future. It's a podcast called Two Bears, One Cave. It's Bert Kreischer, Tom Segura. It's a really fun podcast. And they're both comedians, and Bert Kreischer, who's had a lot of success over the past few years, has had the backing to make his own feature film as of recent. Mm-hmm. And the movie wasn't a huge success. It relatively didn't perform as well, but I think it performed better, and it was one of Netflix's most successful movies as of recent, or it gained a lot of traction in that because of the success of Bert Kreischer's podcast. And a lot of people saw the movie because of his podcast. So podcasting is a great way to have a fan base before the movie comes out, because a lot of people, like Bert Kreischer, they never made a feature film up until that point. Maybe they made appearances, but they never made a feature film up until that point. And they can have a pre-established audience that you don't have to have a Star Wars or a established franchise to just already have an audience. You have a podcast and an absurd amount of viewers that will go see your movie just because they watch your podcast. So that's a cool thing. But then they have the other side of the early reviews and the internet and the Rotten Tomatoes scores and the YouTube critics that are reviewing movies and the early embargoes and stuff. If a movie is confident that it will do well, then it will release an early embargo where they release reviews early. And because of that, they have such confidence that there's going to be good reviews, like early Marvel movies, or like Top Gun Maverick, or like those big budget movies like Dune, that know they have a hit in their hands, and they're like, you know what, release the reviews early. We know the movie's going to be good. We're going to release to the public, and that's going to build up the hype, and that does happen. But then there are other movies that are not great, and then the early reviews come out, and they trash the movie, and it makes the audience like, maybe I don't want to go see that. Maybe I'm not interested. And so, I do think the internet has a huge influence on movies nowadays. That being said, I think it would have been different. I can't necessarily say how that would affect Back to the Future. I think your next example, I have a few more opinions about. I think that would definitely affect it. But I think with Back to the Future, personally, I like that movie. I think it's a good movie. I think, like I said, I think number 3 has a lot more plot similarities than number 1. Or the number 2, number 1. Gosh, that's confusing. But I think I don't know what early reviews would be for that thing, because it's not very conventional with its plot. It jumps all over the place.
Yeah,
it's very messy.
No. As far as it being similarities, yes, I would agree with you that I do see similarities to 1 and 3. I'm just saying that the fact that half of it is just him going back to the things going on in the part 1 and him watching himself in part 1, I feel is just kind of lame. But I like part 3 because it's in the it's in the Western.
Oh, it's great.
His name's Clint Eastwood, and this and that. So, but yeah, that's definitely. I'll say this though: the one thing positive that I'll give you an example that I think helps the podcasting and the early reviews or stuff that comes out with the media is there's one movie that's been in production, and now they pushed it out a year, and that I say thank goodness for people saying what we can know what the actors say overall and what the behind the scenes or what they're gonna push in the movie is this new Snow White movie.
Oh man.
And I say thank goodness for the internet and the podcasting these days, because now I'm definitely with all that crap going on, I hope we don't even ever get that movie, but it helps me save $15, probably more, because my wife's going to go and we're going to buy popcorn and stuff, but it just saves me a lot of money from having to watch that. Now that's hot garbage.
Oh yeah,
even watching it.
No, her reaction online was immediate, met with immediate criticism. And where was it the casting in The Little Mermaid was met with immediate criticism because she didn't match the same kid. Like that actress is a phenomenal singer, and I don't think her perform. I feel like I haven't seen the movie personally, but I've seen clips of her song. She sounds phenomenal. And
You're talking about The Little Mermaid.
The Little Mermaid, yeah. And okay. I think that she is a good actress. I've seen clips of the movie, she's good. She's really good. And I don't see a reason to not see the movie because of her, but because again, there's no real behind the scenes issues with that actress. I think she sounds phenomenal. I think she's a good actress. But with Rachel Zegler, she immediately came out and was just snarky and very it's not a phased mom, and is well, I know better. Well, do you? You've been in the industry for a very short amount of time. What? It seems so up your own. Yeah, it seemed full of yourself.
And you know what? The short time she's been in there, I actually liked her because she was in West Side Story, and the original West Side Story is one of my favorite movies. I have some problems with the new one, but I thought the music was great, and I thought she was good in it. But then when I hear that, and then all that, it's hot garbage. Going back to The Little Mermaid, though, I haven't seen it. My daughter, I believe, seen it, and some people. And they came back to me saying, they changed the word, this and that. And I think a few people came back to me. They said it really wasn't that bad, The Little Mermaid. Did you see it?
No, like I said, I didn't see it, but I've seen clips of it. I've seen, especially some of the musical scenes. The music is great. Again, it's the same as the older one. I think there's a few new songs which aren't nearly as good. But I think people just got too much into oh, she's a different race. Look, that at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. Look, I understand if the original was white and they wanted to recast it. That's obviously that's never it's not an issue, but it's gonna well, she was white in the original. There's gonna be that initial reaction, but I don't think that's enough. She was great in the movie. I think she's fine. But again, that actress herself didn't go out and particularly target
and say weird crap.
Yeah, and say weird crap about the old Little Mermaid. Yeah. I haven't seen any interviews with this person, but there was nothing that she said that specifically targeted the old movie and said anything negative about it. Rachel Zegler essentially just went on her little comment weird, that little comment just immediately rubs you the wrong way, and so many people trashed her because of it. And I'm sure because of all the comments that they've received online because of her, they've just been getting so much negative press, and they even changed the dwarves. It seems,
yeah,
in
to
the picture.
Normal people, 7 normal people, or meat, or
yes,
I can't remember what it is.
7 biracial, not something. People of it doesn't they're not even dwarves in that, but then they changed them back to dwarves, but they're larger dwarves.
I don't know.
I don't even understand what's going on.
I hope they lose so much money or just scrap the whole thing.
That looks ridiculous.
But okay, so another movie, and I think you'll agree with me on this, that would get ripped by the internet. today, and we love this movie, by the way, and it would be Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Because the early reviews would come out and say, "Oh, there's another Death Star. It's a reboot of like copying number 4." And then without looking at context, and I know some people don't care for the Ewoks, but they would say, "Oh, these weird Ewoks, little teddy bear things with bow and arrows, take on the whole empire," you know, and then you might have the other side say, "Well," without knowing that it's just a little part. I'm just, this is probably exaggerating, but you have the other side that might say, "Oh, well, there's the leader of the rebellion is a female, you know,
Oh
it's
my
gone,
gosh.
you know, it's why are they pushing that?" Which,
Why is a woman in charge?
which probably wouldn't have been said back then because there wasn't really woke, you know,
Yeah,
crap
well,
back then.
like the culture is very different. Like back then, it
Yeah.
was like if a woman
But the
was in
Ewok-
position, like no one questioned why Princess Leia was in a position of power. Like especially in like Empire Strikes Back, when she was ordering all the people around, she was in charge. She knew what was happening when she was ordering the pilots around and telling them where to go. Like obviously, she's in charge. She's a good leader and she knows what she's doing. No one questions that, and no one questioned that when Mon Mothma happened. But like nowadays, with all this stuff, like there would be such an emphasis on the other side. Like I'm happy that there's a woman in power, and on the other side, it is like, well, why is there a woman in power? Like there would be the
We've
political
gone to
divide
the
immediately.
That's the problem I feel right now, is that we've gone to the extreme on both sides.
Yes.
Like I like, you know, years ago where, you know, the wokeness was coming out, and then you had certain podcasts, which I love, that were calling out the wokeness. But then I feel like a lot of it has gone a little bit too far to the other side, that anytime you see a minority or a female, you automatically think that they're pushing wokeness.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, no, that's not true. You know, it doesn't, like, let's not write it off, you know, every time, you know, that there's a good chance it is. But probably not. But
that's the whole thing that I think the original pushback was arguing about. Like, we don't want to acknowledge this person because of their race or gender. We want to acknowledge them for being good at their job, for being a good character, for being a good actress. And I feel I personally feel like, as of the last several years, there has been, not 100%, because there are still movies that push that agenda on people, but I think there has been an obvious concerted effort to just make good characters, and I feel like that's fine with me. And I don't, and I agree with like the conservative circle, like the original pushback with woke, that's fine, but nowadays, like anytime there's like a black person in a role, it is like, well, that's a diversity hire. Like, but they could just be a good character or good actress, or cast them because they're the right role. Like, there's no problem with that. That was the whole thing originally. We want good characters, and they're making good characters.
And let's clarify real quick, just in case they happen to see this podcast, which they probably won't, is we're not attacking anyone,
No.
you know, personally. I love, you know, I really like Geeks and Gamers. I like That Star Wars Girl. I think it's RK Outpost. I don't agree with everything they say, so we're not attacking those people you know, we're not directly
Critical
attacking
Drinker.
them, you know, yeah. So, and I actually am very happy for those podcasts, because without them, you know, we wouldn't have that balance.